Welcome to the Mike Litton Experience Podcast. Mike has over 31 years experience in real estate, finance, and investing. He's passionate about being a father, a teacher, a realtor, an investor, and a leader. Everyone has a story, and our passion is to help them tell it. And now, introducing the host of the Mike Litton Experience, Mike Litton.
So what can you expect from the Mike Litton Experience? You can expect stories that will inspire, motivate, advice that will sharpen your focus, and expert information on real estate, finance, and market conditions. We had nothing even remotely close to that, but I had a computer. I had two computers and an iPhone stolen.
I'm sorry.
And some clothes and stuff. Well, it's not your fault. I mean, we had taken my son up to Northern California. He came down when we had a hurricane here, and he flew. His timing is amazing. This is like the third time he's done this. He flies down, and Southwest Airlines cancels all the flights going back, and he's panicking because he has to be back at work on Monday, right? And it's Saturday, and so there's this hurricane. There was this hurricane that was coming in. And so they canceled all the flights. And so as a precaution, right? And so he's sort of panicking on Saturday. And I said, listen, don't worry about it. We'll just pile everybody up in the truck and we'll drive you up. It's a 9-hour drive. We'll drive you up there.
Wow.
We'll leave early. We'll beat the hurricane up there. Okay. We'll drive you up. We'll drop you off. You'll be at work on time on Monday morning. Don't worry. You're going to be fine. We got up early enough and left early enough. We missed a bunch of the traffic, got him up there. Got him in, took him out to dinner that night, even as a family. We had a great time. One of our best dinners ever, one of our best times.
A great family. No, that's awesome.
Turned around the next morning and came back down. Idea was we were going to stop probably halfway, maybe 3/4 of the way, stay the night, and then continue on the next morning. And we decided to just push through and just go home because everybody wanted to sleep in their own bed. So we stopped at this restaurant of ours that we love, that we had eaten at before, and we had a great meal. We come out and somebody had broken the back window of my four-door truck.
No way.
Taken my computer bag that had my computer and my daughter's computer and my iPhone in it, right? Had a whole bunch of my stuff in it, had a whole bunch of my notes in it, all this stuff. And they also take another bag. They would have taken everything in that truck, including the truck, if there hadn't been a witness standing there.
Oh, wow.
Okay. So to say that it took a hole out of our life is an understatement. But here's the deal. It wasn't everything we had. I still had money in the bank. I still had money in my pocket. I still, they didn't take my money. They didn't take my credit cards. They didn't take anything except a computer. And this computer needed to be replaced anyway. So we replaced my daughter's computer, replaced my computer, replaced the iPhone with better equipment. What did we lose, right? Yeah. Except that we had that feeling of being violated, right? We had that feeling of having the back window, right? So to this day, I'm more careful about what I put in that truck and what I leave in that truck parked, locked and all that, right?
Yeah,
so
no.
I can only imagine at your age in a place like Brazil, what you went through. And then I can only begin to imagine what your mother went through because your mother spent her entire life protecting you.
And she took that back.
I tell you that as a dad, right?
Yeah.
And so she put her foot down. And to your credit, you respected that decision enough to abide by it.
I need a family.
Yeah. Well, of course you did. Of course you did.
So I actually, another big lesson, but I stepped out of the lab. I took about a year, and I did. So eventually, I couldn't find a high school in Argentina in Chile, that would take me. Right. So my dad, I actually went to visit my dad right after, and my dad actually worked really hard and found a high school for me to graduate in.
Was he still in Argentina?
Yeah, he's still in Argentina, and I did 3 months of that high school, and I graduated, and they were like, okay.
Good job.
And I graduated on time thanks to that, and it was a family effort, and I took that's where I spent the pandemic. Eventually the pandemic happened and I was with my family because
that was perfect.
It was really great.
That was perfect because everything got shut down. You weren't going anywhere.
I wasn't going anywhere.
Right.
And I had done great stuff at the lab. I had ended it on a great note because we had gotten this really great award, and well, then I had to apply to college.
Yeah.
But in this whole college application process, I didn't have like stellar grades. It wasn't a focus for me. And I think like I think anyone can succeed at anything they want to do as long as they're dedicated to it. And candidly, I just wasn't as focused on my grades. It wasn't a focus, and so because I was so focused on the lab.
Yeah, you gotta want it. You gotta want it bad, and you gotta want it more than anybody else.
Exactly.
Right.
And the only thing I wanted more than anybody else was that it was to make an impact through my research. Is the research is what I wanted. And so I applied to 20 schools. 20 schools.
20, okay.
Top 20 schools in the United States, pretty much. I mean, it was 20, the top 19 and then one extra one that was called Case Western Reserve University in Ohio.
Yeah, I've heard of them. Yeah.
And that one was because going back to those mesenchymal stem cells I told you about way back then,
right?
Turns out that the guy who created them actually lives in Cleveland, and he actually has a lab in the biology department of this university in Ohio that I hadn't heard of. So I'm like, and I mean, obviously I'm from South America. Like I barely know what Ohio was other than like the 2016 LeBron James, like NBA finals,
Right.
you know,
and Cleveland, right? Yeah.
Yeah. In Cleveland. Yeah. And so 19 schools, Mike, said no.
Wow.
I had 19 rejections, and I had one school that said, let's take the kid. And they gave me a great scholarship. And it was Case Western Reserve University in Ohio.
Well, it's a good thing you applied to them.
Yeah, I would have gone. Yeah,
right?
I don't know. What
this would have been a completely different story. Well, I worked flipping burgers, and right.
Yeah,
this would have been a completely different story.
Absolutely, cool. It would have. And but you know what the crazy thing is that it wasn't. And I don't understand how. But here's the thing. Everyone tells me this. They ask me. They're like, Franco, all right, if you would have gone into any one of those other 19. I mean, I'm talking like Harvard, Stanford, right? Brown, Yale, like Princeton, reputable universities. Would you have gone to Case Western? And I would have told them probably not.
Yeah.
I didn't know enough. And now looking back, I would have taken this school over anything, but you know, and so it's like that Rolling Stones lyric, right? You can't always get what you want.
Sure.
But if you try sometimes, you get what you need, you know? And I got what I needed.
And you gotta, here's the thing, you gotta want it bad enough, right? You gotta want it bad enough to never give up.
Yeah.
Because those 19 schools saying no to you, you could have very well said, well, it's not for me.
Yeah. And no, okay. I had that will.
Yeah. You went to Case Western, you were going to make this happen come, you know what, or high water, right? HE double hockey sticks or high water, and you were going to make this work.
Yep.
And so you went to Case Western. What happened then?
Well, I went to the guy who studied the cells that I've been studying since I was 13 years old.
Is this Dr. Kaplan?
Dr. Kaplan.
Okay.
And I sent him an email and I said, I would do anything to work in your lab. And I sent him at this point, it was like 50 pages long, literally, I'm not even kidding. It was a 50-page long paper that I had written, my words, and I translated from Portuguese into English just so, you know, he could read it. And well, and also I had, because I presented at the New York competition, like I already had an English version kind of like written up somewhat. So it was good. It was easy. So I sent him this long email telling him my life story and telling him how I wanted to work in his lab. And this guy had not taken in an undergraduate student to work under him for 8 years.
Yeah.
He loves people, but he was getting old, and he was like, you know what? It's too much training for undergrads.
The life story worked, didn't it?
It did. It did. Being authentic is a huge deal.
It's amazing how this works, right? It's amazing. Yeah. People hear your life story and they connect. Yeah. It gets you places. I love it.
Oh, and I sent him pictures of me like traveling. I was like, this is me.
Yeah.
And it worked. I'm a really authentic person. Like I don't hide.
Oh yeah, I get that.
You know, I truly, you know, I really like, I'm always myself. And that reflects in my writing, it reflects in my work, and you know.
Well, it's refreshing. Okay. Not everybody your age is authentic.
I appreciate it. No, yeah,
No,
I think
seriously.
we should all
And
be.
that helped you to stand out with Dr. Kaplan. I guarantee you it did. That and your life story and the award that you won, okay? Your focus, your drive, your commitment, your dedication, your passion, all of that, I guarantee you, helped you to get through to him. I guarantee it.
No, it's true, and it's true. It's that consistency. It's the
Yeah.
fact that there was a kid who was so driven, who had, been studying it for so long, and who took all these. I told him that I left my mother's house at 16 just to pursue this,
Yeah.
and he's like, "Kid's got skin in the game." He's like, I want to work with them, take him in, and they needed someone at the time because the COVID. There was a couple people who weren't able to work, so they need someone who was there physically in Cleveland, and I just moved in, and the first thing that Dr. Kaplan learned is that I'm really stubborn.
Mm-hmm.
I'm just like my mom, because he the first thing he ever told me was, "You sure you don't want to study biology? I think you should study biology, because if you study biology, you're gonna have a lot more freedom and free time, and you can spend more time in the lab." And I was like, yeah, but I like the biomedical engineering field, and studying biology won't get me anywhere. I want to be an engineer. I want to be a biomedical engineer.
Yeah. I don't want to be distracted. But here's
No.
the thing. He said that as a test.
He maybe did.
He did. I guarantee you he did. He was testing you. He was trying to test your resolve, and you passed with flying colors. I'm
I'll
serious.
tell you one thing, Mike. If there's anything I've done in my life right, it's I've stuck to what I believe in.
Yeah.
More than
Well, you're
anything
focused.
against any odds.
And, not a lot of people your age are, man. There are a lot of people that are your age, still don't know what they want to do.
Yeah.
Okay. I interviewed somebody yesterday or actually earlier today, pardon me, that she's 40 some years old, or she's just turned 40, pardon me, just turned 40. And she's still trying to figure out what she wants to do. You with me? She's still searching.
Yeah.
And that happens to people, and it's more prevalent than you can possibly imagine, that a young person your age just doesn't know. And so one of the unbelievable gifts that you have is you knew early on.
I was standing on the shoulders of giants.
And
I
you
had
stuck
people
to
who were
it, man.
driving.
That's a real testament to you, and it's a testament to your parents. It's a testament to how you were raised.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah,
And
absolutely.
the next time you see your mother, you need to give her a hug and a kiss and thank her from the bottom of your heart. Besides
I'll
telling
tell
her
you
you
said
love
that.
her, right?
Yeah, and it was something. It was a very nice, very positive experience, because I mean, so for you to have an idea, Arnie actually did. So there's
Arnie's Dr. Kaplan.
yeah, Dr. Kaplan.
Okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
I call him Arnie because
That's okay. It's okay. You're allowed.
And he taught me a lot. He did a wound healing company back in the day. And he was the pioneer of what we call the cell therapy. He was the first guy to put cells on humans pretty much as a therapy. And that was what his company was about. He was a pioneer in the field, someone who really made a big difference. And I came to him and I told him, I want to study wound healing in the lab of the guy who created the first cell therapy for wound healing ever. Yeah. And he said, love it, but you're not going to study wound healing in my lab. I'm like, what? He's like, no, if you're going to study in my lab, love it, but you're going to study cancer. You're going to study these same stem cells, but you're going to study them in a different context, and you're going to see how you learn from that.
And why was that? What did you ask him why? I'm sure you did.
I did. And it was nothing scientific at all. It was more a matter of that was his focus, because he was focused on, he thought that there was a way to cure cancer through these cells. And it's a work that's still in the back burner, and we're still working on it. And it's very exciting stuff, but it was, and so he put me on this, I mean, it got me off track. I was so used to wound healing. All of a sudden, I'm using everything I learned, but to study cancer. And I did. And that was what funded most of my summer. Two of my 3 summers I spent studying cancer, doing cancer grants, writing cancer papers, and it was, I learned a lot of valuable skills. Mm-hmm. But at the same time, I still had that itch. Yeah. So I told him, all right, I'll study cancer, but I'm gonna, use the free time that I have with you, and I'm gonna ask you every question I can think of for wound healing.
Right.
Because I'm still going to do it because, and another thing I kind of like skipped out on a little bit, but is that when I was working in Brazil, we worked in a very translational lab, and it was in front of a hospital. And so I witnessed, part of my time was actually spent in what we call like debriding wounds, like cleaning wounds, because as a student, turns out I'm actually like exempt from, I don't need, so because I can be a trainee, a student as a student, I don't actually have to have like these complicated certifications that all the nurses had. And so and it was a collapsing public healthcare system. And so they would just get students and say, come with us and help us. Like, it's really simple. You just grab water, you grab bleach, and you scrub. So it was water, bleach, and scrubbing. That's all we had to treat wounds. And these people would have these, diabetic foot ulcers. These people would come from a rural environment where they would have less access to education and to good quality food. And most importantly, they wouldn't have access to quality healthcare systems either. So then, they would develop pre-diabetes or diabetes. And then essentially, they would develop ulcers from that. And those ulcers, if you don't treat them, they get infected. That infection, it's black, right? And so it starts spreading, and if it spreads into your heart, it's called sepsis, and you're dead within hours. So when your foot's black, it starts hurting a lot. So you actually, you got to go to the hospital. So I would see these wounds by the time they were already at the like hospital level. They were cooking up for months. They smelled awful, and they were so like inflamed, and most of them would get chopped off. Most of them would actually suffer amputation. And I saw these wounds. I would see a person, sometimes I would see the amputation in the operating room, or sometimes I would see a person coming out of the hospital, right? With a leg, and coming into the hospital with a leg, and coming out of it without one.
Right.
And so I told Dr. Kaplan, I'm like, look, I understand, and I get this, but look, I am not going to give up on those people that I saw like all that early on. It's something I've been working on for a long time, and I've been working on it for a reason. So, so on my side time, I would still work on developing novel ideas, but materials, things that could help these people. And I always thought of making them cheap and accessible, so the people who needed most could really benefit from them.
Right.
And that's when actually I started the company. So another big supporter of mine was my father, who was kind of like following along this whole path of science, and helped me graduate high school, and he saw me grow as an innovator, and I had the entrepreneurial itch from this family I grew up with that was an entrepreneur. I had a great mentorship, and so funny story, and I wasn't there. I don't know how it happened, but my father is in an elevator, all right, with a guy who's got a wound healing company. So and my son and my dad's like, oh, my son has a wound healing company. Well, my son. It wasn't a company at that. It was just me doing research in wound healing. He's like, my son does wound healing research. I said, really? No kidding. Send it to me. Let me give it a read. I'll send it to my scientists. They'll tell me what they think. Okay. So they send it to one scientist, and the one scientist sends it to the next scientist. It turns out that the next scientist, that the last guy who saw it, was a legend. All right. Someone who I deeply admire and respect, and knew of his work, because he was the guy. I don't know if you're familiar with glucose test strips. Do you know what those are? Yeah. So it's, before 1995, you needed to get a blood test to know if you have diabetes. Now you can just do it with a piece of paper that's worth 5 cents instead of $300.
Right.
The guy who created that's called Robin Wiskovich.
Okay.
Robin worked with the guy who my dad ran into in an elevator.
Wow.
And so all of a sudden, Robin's reading this scientific article that his 16-year-old kid made, like back all those many years ago. I was a sophomore in college at that time, and so it was a long time ago.
Right.
And like 2020, 2021.
Right.
And he's like, whatever that kid does, I don't, the product itself, the prototype, like, it's not going to be scalable. So it's not going to make sense at a commercial level. Like, it was a product that was really advanced, and it had really complicated proteins that are hard to make, like, manufacture at scale. But he said, look, if a 16-year-old kid did this, chances are he's going to do it again. He's going to do something. And if you can tweak it, you can guide him, he's on the right track.
Right.
So that guy said, you should be betting on your son, like serious business betting on your son. It obviously, like I said, it was probably different way to say, but it was very much on those lines of, my dad comes to me, he's like, kid, we got to work together.
Yeah.
Like, someone who honestly is really respected, who's done a wound healing product, who's, basically just gave you the green light. And they had this technology that was really cool. It's like an antimicrobial technology. And they're like, you know, kid can use it. Whatever he wants to do with it, they can play around with it, figure out a use for it. And I started reading, I started searching, I started understanding, asking questions, growing up around Dr. Kaplan and you know, Arnie and all these scientists and my mentors from Brazil. And eventually, you know, that's when this idea, we said, all right, their technology is cool, but really what we need is a way to deliver it in an efficient way. And so I was coming up with materials that were efficient in delivering compound.
Right.
And another thing is that actually one of my coworkers, this is where I tell you the universe has plays such a big role. One of my coworkers at the Kaplan lab 15 years ago had worked on a cell therapy, but it's like near the year I was born. He's like worked on a cell therapy and he worked on, so what they used to do, and this was really ahead of its time, by the way, it was, they used to grab cells from a patient and then they grab like an open source available to everyone, you know, patch. So it's what we call a scaffold. It's actually like a 3D structure, and we can get into it, but it's basically, you know, they would basically create a structure and they would grab your own cells and they would put that on the structure. Simple. And so what happens is that you're grabbing your own cells and you're growing them externally. It takes like a week or two, and then you're putting them back on your body. And that had great results because we realized that the best thing for your own wound healing, for your own cells, for your own body is your own cells. Like who would have known? So what they did it was they grabbed the cells, processed it with a bunch of external factors, and they put this on this 3D matrix, like a 3D structure that supported cell growth. Because 3D is way better than 2D. And so I'm coming up with materials and systems that can deliver compounds. I look at what they used to do and I'm like, so why are you, and this is what, you know, after a lot of conversations, we kind of realized, and we came up speaking to a couple doctors about it. Why are you processing the cells externally when we can just kind of create something that works from scratch, right? We can just grab all this stuff and put it somewhere that works, into a structure that works and that has everything it needs. So the scaffold has everything your cells need.
So instead of taking the cells from the body,
well, you can still grab the cells from it was originally intended for you to grab cells from your body, but instead of processing them with all this stuff, you just put it straight on the scaffold. So instead of grabbing cells and then processing them,
what's the scaffold?
So the scaffold, in a tissue, there's three things, right? There's cells that you know well, there's proteins, and then there's the mesh that knits it all together. And so the mesh that knits it all together, that's what we call a scaffold structure. So that's basically, it's collagen is a scaffold, for example. So scaffold is actually the literal physical structure upon which the cells live. So it's basically, if you took out your cells, you would be a scaffold, right? It's like, that's it. So that's what I did. And I realized, I was like, we could just create a product, right? A 3D matrix, a scaffold, right? This is all the same word, where cells could be your own cells. Because remember, cell therapies are really useful, really important, but they're really expensive. That's a huge problem, right? And the problem with this expense is that it's because they're spending between 4 hours and 6 hours in an operating room processing these cells with a bunch of liquids, a bunch of elements, and so we just said, what if you don't need to spend 4 hours in the operating room treating these cells? You can just put it straight on a scaffold and it has everything you need.
And when you put it on the scaffold, then the cells grow?
Yeah.
Okay. So instead of this other 3D matrix thing, this is the scaffold that you're using to actually grow the cells.
Yeah.
Is it more efficient?
It was 100%. It was like 99% more efficient in time and in cost.
Okay, so that makes sense. That drops the cost.
Yeah, it was great.
More available, that kind of,
But here's the thing, Mike. That's great. It was great. It works really well, and it's still a product that we have in our pipeline. It still solves a big headache. But, and this is the Franco effect. It's the fact, Mike, that we created that to solve one niche problem that like cell therapists had.
Yeah.
What I realized is that in doing that, we actually created something way bigger than that. Because that same material that we created doesn't just work for those specific cell therapies.
Okay.
In fact, I optimized the manufacturing process. I optimized the material cost of it. I optimized the composition. I created a patent all around it. And so we realized that I can actually add almost anything to it. And it's as simple for me as mixing sugar in your coffee in the morning. Because I built it that way. I built it for it to be easy, simple, and straightforward. And so then we realized, wait, so we don't need to just use it for like cell therapies. No, we can just use it as a dressing itself. So it's standalone. So you don't need to put cells on it. You can just put it straight on your wound. Or wait, and then we start realizing, wait, this supports cell growth in so many ways. I don't need to just put it on the one specific kind of wound. I can put it on any kind of wound. And then we realized, wait, I don't need to put it on just wounds. I can put it on anything that needs cell growth, tissue engineering in general. And there's a whole lot of things in your life that need cells. For example, lab-grown meat, great application. Cosmetics. This is a patch that I can actually create cosmetic products out of. Mm-hmm. We created what we call a multifaceted delivery system, right? Okay. For anything. I mean, any compound, drug, cell, you name it, we can put it. And so we realized that the potential of this was way bigger than what we originally intended it for, because I could spend my entire life building on top of this product and I would never reach its full potential. So if you think about it, and I'll display it to you in really simple terms, right? Really. We basically got the clinical benefit of a stem cell therapy, and we brought that clinical complex structure into something as simple as a Band-Aid and as cost effective as a Band-Aid. In fact, Artemis is as simple as a Band-Aid. I actually just gave my sample to a doctor. Else I would have shown it to you, but it's really simple stuff. We are, if you think about it, a 3D Band-Aid, and we're the next generation of that Band-Aid. And the thing is, Mike, is that we're the next generation of entrepreneurs, because I'm a 21-year-old kid leading a healthcare company that is leading the next generation of tissue engineering. And the secret here is that I knew what I didn't know, because I knew that I knew nothing. Mm-hmm. So instead, I just stood on the shoulders of my mentors, of the giants around me, and I went out of my way. And I spoke to 120 doctors, all of which were really interested in this vision and this idea, and were all of them which gave me really valuable knowledge.
We hope you enjoyed another episode of the Mike Litton Experience. If you did, do us a favor, smash that subscribe button, tell your friends, family, and coworkers about our program, and wherever you get your podcasts, please leave us a rating. It helps us to connect with quality people just like you.
And that's a wrap. Another episode of the Mike Litton Experience in the books. Reach out to Mike on Instagram at Litton Realty. Want to meet with Mike? Check out calendly.com/Rio760.